All right. Hello. Welcome to the LLVM Foundation. I guess we used to call them BOFs, but we're calling it updates now. I'm Tanya Latner. So for anyone who's new in the room, I just want to give a quick reminder about who we are. We're a 501c3 public charitable organization. We were founded in 2014, and the thing with public charities is that we must serve the public good. We're not like maybe some of the other organizations or foundations out there that are more of member-based companies, directly member-based. We have to serve the general public good versus corporate interests. We have a 9-person board elected every 2 years, and we just had a new board elected in this last August. So the LLVM Foundation mission is to support education and advancement of the field of compilers and tools through educational events, grants and scholarships, increasing diversity within the field of compilers, tools, and the LLVM project, and directly supporting the LLVM project community and infrastructure. We support the LLVM community by helping it grow, foster community interactions, work to keep LLVM development productive through infrastructure, and work to ensure the long-term health of the LLVM project. Our overall goal is to make sure that LLVM is thriving and healthy for years to come. We do this through 4 main programs. The first is the Educational Outreach Program, which produces educational materials and events like this LLVM Developers Meeting. We have Community.O, which is our diversity and inclusion outreach. Some of you may have attended the workshop on the day before the conference. We have a scholarships and grants program that supports students traveling to events such as this. And really, the most important is community health and growth through project infrastructure, handling legal issues, and other cross-cutting efforts in the community. As I mentioned, we just had a board election in August, and this is the current LLVM Foundation board. We have Chris Bieneman, unfortunately could not be here today, Christoph, Chris Latner, Anton, Wei Wu is also new to the board, Kit Barton, he's our secretary. We've got Reed, also new to the board, and Mike Edwards, our treasurer, and myself, Tanya Latner. So I'm just going to go through some quick program updates. Our first program, the Educational Outreach Program, most of you can relate this to the LLVM Developers Meetings. We have one in Europe and one in the US. Last spring was our first in-person event since 2009, or first in-person dev meeting since 2019. We had 150 attendees in London, and now here in the fall with the 2022 US dev meeting, we have 375 attendees. However, we are really working to rebuild our events since the pandemic. This chart can show you year over year the growth that we had at our events. But the pandemic has really changed some of the landscape, and we're still trying to rebuild our community. Educational outreach also includes Google Summer of Code. For 2022, this year we had 24 proposals, 15 accepted projects, 11 of those finished, and 2 are in progress, and 2 failed. And lastly, the category of meetups. We've really started to try to do more of this. We had an in-person meetup last October in the Bay Area, and we also had a Women in Compilers and Tools meetup just last month. Community.O, this was formerly known as our Diversity and Inclusion, or Women in Compilers and Tools. So in the past, we've done panel discussions, had working workshops, paid talks such as imposter syndrome, technical speaking, compassionate coding. We've even had a booth at Grace Hopper. We had a workshop at CGO, and sponsored PLMW at Splash and PLDI. Last winter in 2021, we had a Community.O summit that went fantastic. It was virtual. And our current efforts include the Women in Compilers and Tools meetup series, but this is mostly done by volunteers that are not on the board. I just happen to show up every now and then, so I want to make that clear. But it's a great series that we support. We've got the Community.O workshop that we had yesterday, or 2 days ago. The Scholarships and Grants Program, we continue to try to fund students to come to events such as this. Obviously, in 2020, the pandemic disrupted that, but we did try to reimburse the students that obviously could not come because Euro LLVM got canceled. 2021, we didn't offer any scholarships and grants. In 2022, we were finally able to send students to this event, and we had almost $50,000 spent to send, I think it's like 16 students, I can't remember exactly. And we can fund other students to go to other compiler-related conferences, and we really like to grow and expand this program. So probably what many of you are interested in is the LLVM project infrastructure, and these are the various parts that the foundation is managing. So we deal with a lot of the project communication, discourse, mailing lists, the website, all of our social media, Twitter and Facebook, the YouTube channel, and the LLVM blog. In addition, we support project infrastructure for development, documentation generation, release hosting with our CDN. We're transitioning a lot of that to GitHub now. And GitHub management of the services such as the issue tracker, source repository, et cetera. And we do also support some, I think it's release testing through Mac Minis. I think also project infrastructure services that are not hosted by the foundation, Fabricator, LLVM Lab, LNT, and some other Mac Mini hosting. We also deal with lots of the legal issues, relicensing, which we're going to get an update on soon, and handle any license questions regarding code, the documentation, et cetera. We have lawyers on call to answer those questions. And we've also been implementing new project policies within the community. All right, and now I'm going to hand it off to Mike, our treasurer, to talk about finance.
Thanks, Tanya. So I'm Mike Edwards. I'm the treasurer for the foundation. Wanted to talk a little bit today about so the in and the out of the money for the foundation, kind of where money comes in from, and then what we have been spending it on. Our main source of revenue is through the generous donations from all of our sponsors. A huge thank you. Again, I know we say it all the time, but I'll plug it one more time. Our sponsors are amazing. They are what make this reality, right? We wouldn't be able to put on a conference like this if it wasn't for the dollars that the sponsors bring in. And so it's just a really big thank you goes out to them. We also generate revenue from ticket sales, and I know that was something that had created a little bit of a buzz this year because obviously the fee to attend the conference was much more expensive this year than it's been in the past. And I think it's important to sort of point out that over the years, the foundation has really subsidized the cost per attendee to attend this event. And so I wanted to call out that, like this year, this conference in particular, the actual cost per person is around $1,300, right? And a corporate ticket or a full fare ticket for this event was about $900. So right there, I mean, you can start doing a little bit of mental math. And there's a $400 difference there that the foundation is picking up to bring everybody here. You multiply that by the 375 people that are attending, and you also take some money out there for the 100 or so plus free or subsidized tickets that we're giving out to speakers and sponsors and things like that. And all of a sudden, you're right up around 150 grand of money that could be used on other programs, but instead that we're using to subsidize people attending here. So the takeaway from that, and the thing that I want to be very upfront about, is that as we head into 2023 and the events that we're going to host in 2023, we expect the ticket prices for those events to increase as well. Because of the new initiatives that we want to start bringing forward and making progress on with the board, we need to start redirecting some of those dollars that we normally use for subsidies to go towards these new programs. Whoops. And everybody loves a chart. I heard that earlier. I think it's a great saying. So here's a chart. I think the key takeaway here is that you can see where in 2019, pre-pandemic, we had a really good good year for revenue. Corporate sponsors were amazing. We did very well in ticket sales because we had a high attendee count at the conference. And then obviously in 2020 and 2021, that dropped off significantly. We also in 2021 saw sponsor dollars drop because obviously there was huge uncertainty as to where people's funding was going to come from. I'm happy to report that this year we've seen a resurgence of sponsorship dollars come in. We've gained a new sponsor, and ticket sales. They certainly register on the board, but they're obviously not going to be anywhere near what they were in 2019 because we just don't have as many attendees, and so we're not able to make up quite as much of that revenue. So looking at operational expenses, the sort of key takeaway here is that as we are now thankfully returning back to in-person events, and it's super nice to see everybody's face in person, it's really expensive to do it. And it's gotten even more expensive because of the inflation and the pandemic recovery that everybody's going through, right? We have a lot of vendors who are having to make up for 2 years worth of not having income or having very, very reduced income. And so their prices are a lot higher. Supply chain things play into everything. And so that makes just everything cost more for all of the services that we have to engage in to put on an event like this. Our event, the events, so your LLVM and the US Dev meeting, they represent almost 80% of what we actually spend money on during the year, right? So it's a huge, huge number. I think, the other key takeaway there is that with those expenses being so much more today than they were 3 years ago, it's costing us more, and our attendee count is lower because even trying to find a venue that can hold all of us is really, really difficult to do, right? And so we can't find venues big enough to allow the larger numbers, which then cuts into the revenue, all those things. I know I'm kind of belaboring the point, but again, another chart. These are just the breakdown of the programs, where we see expenditures by the different programs that we run, as Tanya's talked about. And just driving the point home that the big blue bar, that's the events, right? And that's where the money gets spent. So looking forward, kind of like what's our outlook as we head into 2023. So obviously the last couple of years, spending has been lower, but now we're starting to ramp back up again as we're starting to do in-person events and the sort of new initiatives that we want to try and get rolling and make progress on in 2023. We're forecasting at this point probably a decrease in revenue in 2023, given the current financial climate and all sorts of other things happening around the world. We're not quite as confident that all of our sponsors are going to bring all of the money back to the table that they have been. We certainly hope they will, and we certainly encourage them to do so because it makes a huge difference in the impact that we're able to have with the community. But we understand. I mean, it's going to be a tough time for everybody out there, and so. In our planning, we're being a little bit more conservative in what we think the revenue dollars will look like in 2023. We are, because of that, one of the things that we want to do again is sort of decrease the financial burden that the events place on the dollars that we have to spend on things. And so we do that by raising ticket prices, probably trying to find venues that are less expensive, things like that. I think another point of interest to everybody is that the board is actually, you're going to see an increase in our general and administrative expenses next year because we actually are looking to hire a couple of full-time people to step in and actually have their job be to help move board and foundation initiatives forward so that we can actually start really making progress on things that we've been talking about for a long, long time. But we've just kind of been stuck in the mud because we're all volunteers. We all have limited hours to be able to do this stuff, and it's really hard to make progress. And so now we'd like to try and put money towards that in a meaningful way and actually move things forward. And probably the last thing that I will note is that given the expenditures that we're expecting there with 2 new full-time employees and what events are going to cost us in those things. We're sort of forecasting at this point we're going to burn through the majority of our cash reserves next year. So we'll get back to being a true non-for-profit and really spending the money the way that we're supposed to be doing it. And so it will We hope that the value that we will bring in the next year obviously is going to be something that everybody's happy to see, but that will also mean that I'll be knocking on sponsors' doors a lot to hope that you're going to want to re-up for 2024, because that's what's going to help keep things alive and going. And with that, I will turn it over to Christoph.
Thanks, Mike. A short update on relicensing. So this is something that's been going on for quite a while. In 2019, we installed a new license. For about 19 years before that, people have contributed code to LLVM under a different license, and we would like all of the code to be under the same license. So there's about 33 million lines of code that was contributed before 2019. Copyright law practice means that we have to go back to whoever owns the copyright and ask, hey, would you like to offer your code under this different license? So we went out and have been getting approvals for, I think, something like almost 2,000 individuals, well over 100 companies. I don't remember the exact numbers. The result is today we have 98% of all code ever contributed is covered under the new license. That's good news. There's also the remaining challenge is this has long tail characteristics. So there's still a long tail left. There's about 400 individuals who would still like to find a way to reach out to them. There's a number of companies and corporations. We still need to find a way to reach out to them and get them to agree. A lot of the details of who those individuals are, who those companies are, they're pointed to in the blog posts on the slides. There's a lot more details there. So at this stage, it seems like it's worthwhile to still continue to invest in finding those individuals, reach out to them, try and get a signature. At some point, that will probably completely run out of steam, and then there will be some pieces of code left over. We will need to build a plan on what to do with that. Options are, maybe there's a possibility to just remove the code or we rewrite it. Currently, not a lot of effort is going into that, but at some point that will have to happen. One last thing I think in this presentation is I personally thought that the board in the past 2 years has achieved a lot of accomplishments, and quite often it remains a bit hidden or invisible, and so I thought it's worthwhile to just enumerate a few of the things that we achieved. So on the infrastructure side, we successfully moved from the Bugzilla issue tracker to GitHub issues. Also, we successfully moved the mailing list to using Discourse now. On the developer meetings, like we had a tough time. Well, everyone had a tough time with the pandemic, but still, we kept the meetings going in the virtual setting, which wasn't easy. But I really, really appreciated still being able to meet people, even if it was online. We now also have online sync-ups, so that these are regular calls on specific technical topics where people can come together and discuss. I think we already had some of that going, like the very early steps of that going in the years before, but maybe thanks to the pandemic, that really took off, and I think that's really benefiting the community. Another initiative to allow people to connect with each other is office hours. And so that's starting to go. We now also have an LLVM community calendar where you can actually see all of the stuff that's going on. So all of the meetups in the world, the dev meetings, the office hours, the online sync-up. So if you actually go and have a look, I think every day there's at least 2 or 3 things going on. So you really see like just how much activity, not just on like pure code contributions, but all of the interactions in the community, everything that goes on. And not sure if this is the last point or if there's another slide, but we now have we've finalized our code of conduct. It's actually active in full force. It's been in a draft state for quite some time, but it's there now. Relicensing already covered, so made some good progress there. We're answering more legal questions than before around licensing. And yes, we're setting project policies to ensure a safe and welcoming community. The strategic planning, that's for Tanya.
Okay, so strategic planning. So what the board would like to do is start setting more of a 3-year and a 5-year roadmap for the LLVM Foundation. And what we'll be doing in January and February is we're going to be hosting community meetings. These will be on Zoom, obviously, to get input for the community about how they would like to see each of our programs change and grow. And we'll take all that input and then set the plan for the 3 to 5 years in the budget. Everyone is welcome to join, so please do, and we'll be posting this information on Discourse in the coming month. And also, as Mike had mentioned before, we're planning to hire more LLVM Foundation staff so that we can actually make progress on a lot of these initiatives. With all that said, we still have time because I really want to answer any questions that anyone has in the audience. So I'm going to invite the board to come up here, the board members that are here. Unfortunately, Weiwu, Anton, and Chris Bieneman could not make it, but we have most of the board. So now I'll take questions. Easy crowd.
Yeah, it'd be great. So we can remote people.
So probably for Tanya or for Mike, what's your projected number of people attending for the US conference next year? So before you answer,
Yeah.
think about your numbers, Mike.
Yeah.
So it costs $400 per person. So if you doubled it, it would go from 150K to 300.
300, sure.
So
Yeah.
There's going to be some point where it's not sustainable.
Right. And do you want to say something? We hit a point of diminishing returns, right? It becomes too expensive to actually host the conference as we hit a certain level. And so that's probably the main driver. And obviously, ticket prices have to raise. I mean, we have to stop subsidizing as much as we do. As we do that, though, that should allow us to grow and provide more attendees. I think really the biggest hindrance or the biggest limiter on attendees, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tanya, but it's the venue, right? Being able to find the venue and what we can support given the dollars that we have, how many people we can support, because there's all the food and beverage that goes with everything, all the support services that go with having that many people. I personally would love to see us get back to the 2019 numbers, right? I mean, back up around 600, 700 people I would be ecstatic if we could do that. And I think that's what we're going to try and go for. There's just a lot of what ifs there. Does that kind of answer your question, Tom?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if you asked us 3 months ago, we were saying, yeah, we really want 700 people for next year. A lot has changed in 3 months.
Yeah. Yep.
So we're trying to be conservative in that we don't want to lose money on this event. Every time we book a venue, we have a room block, and we need to fulfill those obligations or we're on the hook for the money. So we want to be aggressive but conservative at the same time.
So also, I mean, I think Mike did a good job of speaking to this, but it's also for the sponsor dollars, we want to be doing the right thing for the sponsors, right? And so we've gotten feedback that sponsors want to be investing in infrastructure and the other things like that benefit the community at large instead of subsidizing tickets as much, right? And so what that means is that many people are unhappy about the ticket prices raising, but if the low prices are only possible because of sponsors, right, it kind of makes sense to shift that burden onto folks who are attending, and then that way they're covering the cost of the tickets, and then the sponsor money can go into hiring somebody to do IT work and get all the infrastructure stuff to be upgraded.
Yeah. Anybody else? No, really?
Great. Well, thank you everyone for coming, and we'll be around here if you have any questions.